Hello everyone, I am Daeyoun Cho from Jeonbuk National University in Korea. Today, I will present a QGIS-based visibility analysis of the Route 5 beacon network in the Joseon Dynasty of Korea, spatial visibility of the half-day beacon relay. For clarity, I will refer to this as the half-day relay throughout the presentation. During the Joseon Dynasty, a nationwide beacon network consisting of 5 main routes converging on the capital Seoul was established. This system allowed urgent messages to be sent quickly from the borders to the central government. The code was simple. 1 to 5 lights represented escalating levels of urgency. Beacon towers were positioned at intervals on leads to ensure continuous transmission. Among these 5 routes, Route 5 connected to the West Sea coast with the capital, and our study focused on testing the feasibility of the half-day relay norm in this Jeonbuk section. Beacon towers, known as Bongsu, form the backbone of the military communication system in Joseon. Smoke was used by day and torches by night. This system was in operation for over 5 centuries. Its purpose was to alert the central government to emergencies at the borders, thereby reinforcing state authority. The coding system was efficient. 1 to 5 simultaneous lights indicated stages of urgency, ranging from minor alerts to the most critical threats. Our research focuses on the Jeonbuk section of Route 5, which connected the West Sea coast to the capital. This segment was one of the most critical relay lines. We examine whether line of sight continuity and overlapping coverage, so essential to reliability, were preserved from the early to the late Joseon period. On the right, you can see a map of this Jeonbuk Route 5 stretch, connecting the coastal nodes inland to the Seoul. By focusing on this stretch, we can assess the practical feasibility of the half-day relay. This approach also demonstrates the impact of institutional changes on spatial communication networks. Our study is guided by 3 main questions. First, to what extent did line of sight continuity persist along Jeonbuk Route 5 from the early to the late Joseon period, and what are the implications of this? Secondly, how did redundancy, for example, in the form of overlapping views, average degree, and the emergence of single points of failure, or SPOF, changes with the abolition or contraction of beacon stations? Thirdly, what are the implications of the collapse of overlaps for the overall reliability and strategic function of the half-day relay? On the right, you can see the spatial layout of beacon sites, which serves as a basis for these questions. By answering these questions, we can establish a connection between spatial analysis and historical evaluation. To address these issues, we conducted 3 analyses in QGIS. First, we performed a viewshed analysis to identify the areas visible from each beacon station. Secondly, we performed a line of sight LOS network analysis to examine overall connectivity. Thirdly, we used LOS profiles to inspect critical cross-sections in detail. We used a 5 to 30 meter DEM from the National Geographic Information Institute of Korea with EPSG 5179. These data form part of the open government information provided by the Korean central authorities and incorporate archaeological site record. As they are open source, other researchers can easily access them and replicate our result using the same DEM and coordinate system. For early Joseon period locations, we referred to the 신증동국 여지 승남 from 1530. For late Joseon period coordinates, we used the 증보 문헌비고 from the 1770s. Together, these datasets enables us to reconstruct and compare the evolution of beacon network over time. Here, we can see the result of the viewshed analysis for the Jeonbuk section of Route 5. The early Joseon map on the left shows broader coverage with overlapping visibility zones extending from the coast inland. In contrast, the late Joseon map on the right shows more restricted coverage with narrower lines of sight. This visual contrast provides an initial indication of how the network changed. I'll explain these differences in more detail on the next slide. In the early Joseon period, coverage was continuous from the coast to inland areas. These extensive overlaps created redundancy, meaning the system could absorb local disruptions and still function. However, in the late Joseon period, overlaps collapsed and blind zones widened, particularly near the estuary and open plains. The chain became linear and fragile, with little resilience to interruptions. This clearly indicates a decline in the reliability of the half-day relay. Now, we will move from maps to network graph. The early Joseon network on the left appears more interconnected with triangular links and a mesh-like structure showing a higher average degree across the station. This indicates the presence of multiple overlapping paths, which helped to absorb local disruptions. In contrast, the late Joseon network on the right looks thinner and more linear, leaving primarily the Gaehwa-Hwasan line as the backbone. This side-by-side comparison already suggests a significant structural change, which I will discuss further on the next slide. During the early Joseon period, the LOS network was triangular or mesh-like in structure. Beacon stations had multiple alternative routes, meaning that if one failed, the others could absorb the disruption. This redundancy ensured the half-day relay remained stable. In contrast, the late Joseon network shifted towards a single trunk line. The average degree and clustering dropped sharply, creating a fragile system. A single point of failure emerged near the Geum estuary, where even minor disruptions could jeopardize the entire relay to Seoul. During the late Joseon period, the network relied heavily on this section as alternative node has been discontinued. Consequently, even minor disruptions here could disrupt the entire Seoul relay. Hwasan itself lies on a very gentle terrain with an average slope of less than 3 degrees and only 6% steep areas. This made it easier to approach, build on, and maintain than other sites. However, visibility was not only a matter of terrain. In practice, this coastal section was often affected by heavy sea fog, haze, or seasonal atmospheric conditions. Such weather could restrict visibility between Hwasan and Gaehwa-do, adding another layer of fragility to the late Joseon relay chain. This table compares the slope conditions at three beacon stations, Gilgok, Sajaam, and Hwasan. The main point is that Hwasan is exceptional, with an average slope of less than 3 degrees and only around 6% of the area classified as steep. It is clearly the most favorable location. In contrast, Gilgok and Sajaam are located on steeper terrain, which makes access and maintenance more challenging. Despite the risks of relying heavily on the Hwasan-Gaehwa-do section, Hwasan's exceptionally gentle terrain is the reason it was retained as a key site in the late Joseon network. This table shows the distances between major beacon stations along the Jeonbuk Route 5 segment. This helps us to identify sections that were particularly long or vulnerable. Notably, the Gilgok-Osongsan section is one of the longest, making it more susceptible to weather-related visibility issues and potential interruptions. Conversely, the Gaehwa-do-Hwasan line played a vital role in the late Joseon network, not due to distance, but because many alternative nodes had been discontinued. Together, these patterns clarify why certain nodes persisted while others were discontinued. Let me summarize what the results show about the structure. During the early period, the stations formed a triangular, mesh-like network through overlap. With a higher average degree and clustering, signals had multiple alternative paths, enabling local disruptions to be observed and ensuring the half-day relay remained stable even under imperfect conditions. By the late period, administrative streamlining had simplified the system into a single trunk line. As the overlaps disappeared, the average degree and clustering coefficient decreased, and transmission became path-dependent. If the path was cut, there was no easy bypass. This created bottlenecks, most notably near the Gum estuary, and exposed a SPOF, where the loss of one station could sever the coastal link to the capital. In short, the system's overall reliability shifted from redundancy as a network property to the robustness of a few critical stations and day-to-day visibility. This contraction represented not only a technical change, but also a deliberate policy choice. Following the Imjin and Manchu wars, the state reallocated resources in recognition of the limitations of the beacon system. Alternative communication methods, such as horse couriers and postal relay stations, became more important, while the beacon relay was reduced to a minimal backbone. So, in the late Joseon period, the network reflects not only vulnerability, but also strategic adjustment. It shows how military communication evolved under fiscal constraints and institutional pressures, which is an interesting topic for further study. During the late period, the disappearance of overlaps resulted in bottlenecks and a SPOF near the Gum estuary. Although the half-day relay remained geometrically possible, the system became much less reliable. Our QGIS analysis confirms this shift. We see the systematic loss of redundancy, the emergence of a fragile trunk line, and a lower average degree. This pattern may reflect late-period streamlining in the form of operational contraction and cost savings, and it is clearly evident in the spatial record. We can further test this interpretation by comparing it with chronicles, gazetteers, and field evidence. And finally, it aligns with broader late Joseon trend. Wartime weaknesses exposed the limits of the beacon relay, and the state turned increasingly to alternative communications. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.